popular programmes to London and the South East. Carlton, your weekday ITV.
From ITN, News at 10 with Trevor McDonald.
Major's election promise, more prosperity, more choice. The constituency verdict tonight on Piers Merchant. IRA signals an end to violence before the election. And the operation that brought a blind man out of the darkness. Good evening. The Prime Minister launched the Conservative election manifesto today and promised everyone more prosperity and more choice. The manifesto contained 25 commitments, including tax incentives for married couples, where one partner stays at home to care for children or relatives. It's thought the plan could benefit around 2 million families by up to £930 a year. Labour, who published their manifesto tomorrow, said voters should no longer believe Tory promises on tax. And the Liberal Democrats criticised what they called tax breaks for the few. Their manifesto will hit the campaign trail on Friday. Here's our political editor, Michael Brunson.
With a copy of the manifesto in his hand, the party chairman, Brian Mawhinney, escorted the Prime Minister into Central Office, where Mr Major made this claim for the document.
It is the boldest and most far-reaching manifesto any party has published since 1979. It is time for change. Time for a change to the next phase of Conservative prosperity that will give everyone, no matter who they are, where they live, where they come from, more choice and more control over their lives.
In the heavily trailed programme, Mr Major confirms the aim of a 20p basic tax rate within 5 years, the complete overhaul of the basic state pension, and the building of a grammar school in every town where parents want one. But among the new ideas, still more self-government in state schools in handling budgets and hiring teachers, a respite care scheme, cash for those looking after family members to take a break, and most controversially, a new tax break for some married couples, letting wives or husbands who stay at home caring for children transfer their tax allowance to their spouses. But if they're returned to power, how will ministers find the £1.2 billion that last proposal will cost? In the same way, Mr Major told me, as they've always financed their tax cuts in the past.
As for the affordability of it, we have made clear from the outset that all our tax pledges are as affordable. We believe that there will be scope to make tax reductions, and we have made it clear that this is a priority that will precede in priority our other tax proposals of reducing the standard rate to 20 pence in the pound.
But the Shadow Chancellor said that claiming there'd be money around somewhere for a specific commitment to married couples was irresponsible.
The fact of the matter is that this is a rush proposal. It is out of panic for the Conservatives to have a manifesto commitment. Mr Major is unclear how it is going to be funded, and I think the conclusion that most people will draw today is that what seems substantial in the morning seems rather puny by the rest of the day, and at the same time it is not funded, and you cannot trust the Conservatives on tax.
Paddy Ashdown took up the issue of Mr Major's latest tax promises after he'd highlighted Liberal Democrat pledges for increased spending on schools and earlier on the health service.
When will this tax cut be delivered and how will it be paid for? If this is yet another auction of fantasy promises, a sometime never tax cut, then I don't think the British people are going to believe one word they hear from the Conservatives on more tax promises that can't be paid for.
So after Mr Major had set out the Tories' stall and been photographed with the new manifesto, I asked him about the rest of the campaign.
It is said that you don't just hope you can win, that you are absolutely and utterly convinced in your own mind there's no question whatsoever that you will win. Is that right?
I believe we're going to win this election. Yes, I do. I've always believed we were going to win this election.
It's not a hope, it's a certainty.
No one ever takes the British electorate for granted. I think they're very arrogant and very silly if they do. But I believe that we have set out the policies and created the conditions in this country that make me very relaxed in saying to the British nation, we have improved the quality of life in this country. We would like to do more. Please give us your support so that we may be able to do it.
Doesn't your attitude that you will win fly in the face, really, of all the evidence over the past 5 years of how you've run the country?
I don't believe that it does, Michael. I think for every indication you give, I could give a counter-indication. And indeed, I didn't indicate to people how well the economy would be doing. I didn't promise people I'd have interest rates as low as they are, mortgage rates as low as they are, unemployment falling as much as it is, but we have achieved that.
You've not asked in the removal men yet, then?
I expect to win this general election, and I expect to take our case to every corner of the United Kingdom in doing so.
And as Mr Major fulfills that pledge, the other parties will now set out theirs. Labour will do so tomorrow. Michael Brunson, News at 10, Westminster.
So how have Mr Major's plans for tax breaks for people who stay at home gone down with those who do look after children and other relatives? ITN's Penny Marshall has been finding out.
Where is Spot the dog?
Traditionally the party of the family, the Conservatives have pushed that image to the forefront today. Their taxation plans reinforce marriage and traditional values. Welcome news for some new parents.
Obviously it's going to help a little bit, and it's good news as far as I'm concerned. If I'm not working, then it's a little bit of extra money. But I think really it's not actually going to make much of a difference in whether I decide to go back to work in the long run.
Under the Tories' pledge, a married couple would qualify for the tax allowance if one of them was staying at home to care for children, an elderly relative or any other dependent family members. The Tories say beneficiaries would get up to £17.50 a week because of the tax break. Sharon Wake wouldn't benefit, though, because she's not married to her long-term partner. She works part-time outside her home and looks after her children in it. She says she feels excluded.
I do believe those values that the government are trying to put across are good values. But at the same time, I don't think they should enforce that people should be married.
The government denies this scheme is designed to promote marriage, but others say it's crafted to encourage it.
In a sense, it's a reversal of 20 or 30 years of trying to get the state out of what used to be called social engineering and beginning to try to use the tax system in a very interventionist way to affect the way that people organise their social lives.
It would certainly affect carers. Dervla Park looks after her disabled mother-in-law and also has a job. Although she welcomes the initiative, she says not enough money is on offer.
If I do give up work, the financial incentive they're giving us would cushion the blow, but unfortunately I don't think it's enough.
How about that?
Most families would not be affected by the changes, but for 1/5 of Britain's 10 million married couples, the Tories are promising a financial reward for caring for the family at home. Penny Marshall, News at 10, Southampton.
The election campaign in Scotland stepped up a gear today. The Conservatives, for the first time, published a separate manifesto for Scottish voters. The Liberal Democrats launched their Scottish campaign, and the SNP did the same. From Edinburgh, our Scotland correspondent Linda Kennedy reports.
Defence of the Union, the core of the Conservatives' manifesto for Scotland. There are also purely Scottish proposals relating to law and order and education to preserve Scotland's identity in the UK.
Patriotism is about fighting and standing up for your country. And standing up for your country, Scotland, does not mean saddling us with a tax-raising parliament which will destroy our public services and put people on the dole.
Paddy Ashdown, marking the start of the Liberal Democrats' Scottish campaign, scorned the Conservatives.
This document, it appears to me, is not so much manifesto as horror comic, and I hope will be treated by the Scottish people with the disdain that it deserves.
The Scottish nationalists, who launched their campaign for independence today, accused the Conservatives of pretending to have policies which were Scottish.
Given the anti-Scottish record of the Conservative Party, I think it's quite extraordinary to try and put a tartan ribbon round a fundamentally anti-Scottish package.
Labour's Harriet Harman, on the campaign trail in Scotland today, said the Conservatives' proposals couldn't be trusted.
The Tory manifesto being launched in Scotland today is desperate and dishonest and dangerous.
Labour and the Liberal Democrats unveiled their Scottish programmes on Friday. And what the separate campaign here is about is the possible transfer of power from the Scottish office to this chamber. It's here that Labour and the Liberal Democrats want a devolved parliament. But the Conservatives fear political control inside this building may break up the union. For the SNP, only independent government here will do. Linda Kennedy, News at 10, Edinburgh.
Elsewhere in the country, other senior party figures were out on the campaign trail today. Labour's deputy leader John Prescott visited a cattle market in Staffordshire, attempting to win over the farming community. He said that the Conservatives' handling of the BSE crisis was just one example of its many policies of failure. Former Conservative MP Emma Nicholson, who defected to the Liberal Democrats, was in London today attacking the Prime Minister. She said John Major's promises at the last election had proved quite worthless. And Defence Secretary Michael Portillo was in Northern Ireland meeting members of a quick reaction force, the first troops to respond to a terrorist incident. During his visit, he was shown a collection of weapons recovered in recent raids by the army. The Conservative MP Piers Merchant heard the verdict of his local party tonight after newspaper reports about his relationship with a teenage nightclub hostess. They were deciding whether he should remain as their candidate. They decided he should, and by a big majority. Adrian Britton was at the meeting.
Into a scrum of photographers, Piers Merchant arrived, refusing to make any statement, any answers firmly reserved for terse questions by grassroots Tories. With the overwhelming support of the 46-strong local executive, he would now be questioned by scores of party members over these Sun newspaper pictures, alleging an affair with 17-year-old nightclub hostess Anna Cox.
I find it absolutely incredible for a chappie at 46 to find himself in this position.
I mean, if you take France, whatever an MP does doesn't matter, as long as he's a good MP.
Well, obviously we're not happy, but we want to see what he has to say.
That meeting took place behind closed doors, Piers Merchant explaining why he should be allowed to defend the seat which he holds with a 15,000 majority. His supporters say he was set up.
This is not the Spanish Inquisition. We're not going to destroy a guy's career on the basis of tabloid tittle-tattle and a few photographs.
But after hearing his apology, only 4 of 120 votes went against him.
I accept that I made a stupid mistake last week. I've already said that. I've apologised for that.
A few days ago, the prospect of a vote for Piers Merchant was being seen as a defiant gesture against central office. But after John Major's comment that he wouldn't bow to the witch hunt mentality, there is now an attempt to show that the local and national party are at one on this issue. Adrian Britton, News at 10, Kent.
And our political editor, Michael Brunson, joins me now in the studio. Mike, so Piers Merchant survives, but let's go back to the publication of the Conservative manifesto today. The Prime Minister called it the boldest since 1979. Is it?
Well, it doesn't perhaps appear as bold when you consider some of the Conservative manifestos in the past, which took on things like privatising the railways, privatising BT, the huge reforms in the National Health Service. You'll remember all those. But what Mr Major would say is that tackling now things like the great problems with the basic state pension, tackling things like the problem of people getting older and needing more medical care as they get older, he would say that is quite as radical as some of those great ideas in the past.
What about tomorrow? What will Labour do?
Yes, well, tomorrow we get Labour's manifesto, so that's when the fine detail of the words, if you like, are joined. Now, today, there we are, we've had the Conservatives. You could only be sure with the Conservatives, that manifesto. Tomorrow, Labour will present their manifesto this way. It'll be headed up, as you see, New Labour, because Britain deserves better. There'll be a 16,000-word manifesto inside, and it will come under 10 headings. This is Tony Blair's 10-point contract, as he puts it, with Britain. And to prove how hands-on he's been in all this, we've been issued with the copy of his original notes for the 10 points. There they all are, set out, for example, in his own handwriting. Number 2, for example, there will be no increase in the basic and top rates of income tax. Well, you see, Dr. Mawhinney didn't think that he ought to be outdone this way, so he's issued his rebuttal also in handwritten form. And so against number 2 there, he's got, well, number 2, Labour has 30 billion of spending commitments requiring higher taxes and borrowing. So it goes on. We've got the Tories apparently threatening to send a chicken tomorrow to Labour's press conference to say they were chicken over the debate, and the Labour are going to say, oh, well, you were chicken over the whole business of sleaze. So it goes on.
We'll talk again tomorrow. Coming up next on News at 10, details of tonight's crucial World